Witajcie. Dzisiaj mam dla Was przygotowany super materiał. Jest to rozmowa, no bo nie wywiad, z autorem książki Kreatywność na zawołanie Todd Henry oraz autorem drugiej książki, jaką wydawnictwo OSM Power przetłumaczyło w Polsce, czyli Daj Empty życie na 100%. I mówię, że nie jest to wywiad z Toddem Henry, tylko rozmowa, bo jak sami zobaczycie, była to wymiana doświadczeń, zarówno moich z jego doświadczeniami i w drugą stronę. I mam nadzieję, że ten materiał będzie dla Was bardzo wartościowy, równie wartościowy jak był dla mnie. Zapraszam Was serdecznie do obejrzenia tego prawie 30-minutowego materiału. Życzę Wam dużej uważności i notowania ciekawych tipów, które od Todda można było otrzymać. A później, jeśli będziecie mieli ochotę tą książkę sobie przejrzeć, to Wam wklejam link poniżej do książki Todda Henry'ego Kreatywność na zawołanie. Dajcie też proszę znać, czy potrzebujecie przetłumaczenia tego materiału, ponieważ jest on po angielsku. Dzięki, miłego oglądania.
How are you? How's life?
Life is going very well. Yeah, staying very busy. I'm traveling quite a bit. Obviously, I have a new book that just came out, so that's keeping me very busy as well. I'm spending a lot of time promoting that, almost all day online, doing interviews. But that's kind of the life that comes along with it, which is great, and it's always fun to get to talk about ideas. So.
With strange people around the world, strange guy from Poland who translated your book, and we are promoting you as an expert of the creativity, the best guy. If you want to be more creative, go to Todd Henry.
Well, thank you, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing in Poland. I'm very excited about that.
We are doing different kind of marketing activities, and our best tool is that we organize workshops and conferences for around 150 people.
Mm-hmm.
We call it How to Be More Creative.
Mm-hmm.
And all people who are attending are paying the amount for a ticket, which is equal to the price for a book. Mm-hmm. And they get the book as an extra gift to the conference.
Oh, wonderful.
And we did it in 3 cities. So actually around almost 400 people bought your paper cover book.
Wonderful.
This one, thanks to these events. And I'm kind of like Todd Henry ambassador in Poland because I'm sharing with them.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm hopeful that someday I can find my way over and actually get to meet you in person and share some ideas in person. So
if you are anywhere in Europe, just let me know. I can buy a cheap flight to London to meet with you for a coffee. For me, it would be a pleasure, and that's no problem.
Yeah, then the next time I am in Europe, I will definitely reach out to you because I think that would be wonderful if we could work that out.
Okay, I spoke with your guy about bringing you to Poland,
Mm-hmm.
but the amount that he told me is not in the Polish.
It's very, the problem is if I'm not already there, it's very cost prohibitive for me to get to Europe, right? It's very cost prohibitive. So I think that a better route would be the next time I am in Europe for another engagement, then
Yes.
we could maybe perhaps just attach something to that. So that way it will be, significantly less cost prohibitive to do it.
Yes, that's a great idea. And of course, we saw your third book, but for now we want to focus on the first 2.
I think that makes a lot of sense, yes.
Yeah, we promote the website toddhenry.pl, not like specific books,
Mm-hmm.
so we can just add extra titles in the future. But I think we were gonna buy this third title as well, because we can have like a series of 3 books from one author about almost the same topics that are like puzzles.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Okay, so I was thinking about starting this like a chat, not interview, about sharing with you some thoughts about Polish reaction on your book.
Okay.
But with the first book, we call it Kreatywność na zawołanie, if you want to learn how to pronounce it.
Okay. I'll let you do it. How about that? I'll let you pronounce it.
I think we can translate it in English like how to be creative like that.
Wonderful. Great.
And most of people were buying this book because they want to be more creative. But after reading a couple of chapters, they were writing to us or telling us that this book is actually about time management. And they were a bit surprised at the beginning, but I was telling them, keep reading.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, they said,
Yes,
that was
yeah.
about.
Yes.
So it's like long introduction. They were saying like 2 or 3 chapters of introduction
Yes.
to get what you want to tell them. and the next chapters they get the bam, 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 bam things.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, it requires some context, right, for us to understand. So before I dive into the practices, I think people want to go straight to the practices, go straight to the tips. You know, what do I do? But if you don't diagnose the problem, it's difficult to treat the disease if you don't understand the symptoms that you might be experiencing. And so that's why I wanted to take a significant amount of time at the beginning of the book to talk about some of the pressure, some of the dynamics that we experience as creative professionals, so that we can begin to identify the problems that we're experiencing, some of which we maybe have never been able to put terms to before. We didn't have language for it, so that when we begin to implement practices, then we understand how that's designed to countermand some of these dynamics. So I'm grateful that people are pushing through that and getting into the specifics, into the practices. But I do think it's important. That sequence was very strategic, because I think we often don't talk about how we do the work. We just want to dive in and learn tactics and tips and tricks, but those can fall flat if we're not thinking holistically, if we're not looking at the grand scale of our work and understanding how creating under pressure affects us psychologically, physically, emotionally. Then tips and tricks are eventually going to fail us.
Another thing that we have to do in Poland is to communicate that this book is great for business people, because they can get so much from it to put their business on another level. But people are thinking that creativity is something for artists, not for business people. And I'm telling them, hey, just try the book, read it. After 5-6 chapters, you will get the sense of Todd Henry ideas, and you will see how you can manage the creative process in your company, actually to earn more money. That's the point of dealing with business.
Right. Yes, and creativity, at the heart of it, is problem solving. Being an excellent business person is a creative endeavor. You have to look at things that seem like they don't go together, different dynamics in the marketplace, opportunities, obstacles, and you have to figure out how to navigate them, how to get around them, how to get over them, how to overcome them, how to compete with the people who are trying to put you out of business. All of those endeavors require creative thinking, because they're a form of problem solving. And so whether you think you're a creative or not, you are a creative if you are solving problems every day, which means that you have to have practices or disciplines in your life to help you do that sustainably, to help you create on demand, to help you solve problems more effectively. And those who have disciplines in their life, those who are prepared for that moment when they need to be brilliant, as we all do on a frequent basis, those who prepare themselves are the ones who ultimately are going to win, because they're not going to succumb to the pressure. They will have practices, disciplines in their life, and methods for dealing with those create on-demand moments.
And I don't know how it's in the US, but in Poland, people are thinking about ideas, that ideas are cheap. I agree with this, but ideas are cheap if you have only a few, or you have bad ideas. They are very cheap that time. But to get with the great ideas, you have to work with your idea muscle, to train yourself to be more creative, to generate new ideas, and to be able to create idea about implementing your ideas.
Yes.
It's like never-ending story.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ideas are just the very first part of a very long process, right? Execution is the biggest part of bringing your idea into the world. And you're right. Many people have ideas, a lot of ideas, but they never actually execute those ideas. And the reason is that they're not being purposeful about their focus. They're not being purposeful about building relationships that help them stay focused, stay charged, stay engaged. They're not managing their energy, so they have no energy to devote to an idea. They're not filling their mind with inspiring stimuli, with bits of information and inspiration that help them think differently and more systemically about their work. They're not managing their hours for effectiveness. They're managing for efficiency. So they're not able to take intuitive leaps and do things that aren't paying off, that won't pay off now, that won't have an immediate benefit, but that will have a huge benefit in 5 years. And so I agree with you that ideas are a dime a dozen. We all have lots of ideas, but those who are disciplined, those who approach their life by design, not just by default, are the ones who actually have the deep well of resources to then act on those ideas and put those ideas into the world. And at the end of the day, that's what really changes the world, are people who not only have ideas, but who act on those ideas. But that requires discipline. And we know that it requires discipline, but we don't go the extra step of building that discipline into our life often, and we think, well, someday I'll get around to that. Someday I'll do that. But those who change the world are those who act, not someday, those who act in a measured, strategic way every single day on their ideas until they bring them into the world and impact others.
And you do also write about the right environment to be able to be as much focused on your goals and creative process. You write something about the man cave that you built for yourself.
Right.
And I love this idea, and I think that a lot of people were thinking about, oh, I have to build like a cave behind my house. But for example, my cave is in a coffee shops.
Right.
I love to work in the coffee shops with taste of the coffee, the smell of the coffee, the noise of strange people around me, but I can focus on my things. And that's the best part for me. And second part is when I travel on the plane, on the airports. Like it's completely different state of mind because I'm in a different, there's no interruptions. I focus only on being in a journey, but then I can think, I can write, I can create, I can make some calls, I can, brainstorm.
Absolutely. And I think, I have that space in my home. And we just built a new home a couple of years ago, and I very strategically built a space in my home where I could go and be alone, and I can think, and I can write, and it's, has little notes all over the place, and I'm surrounded by books, and it is a place to be alone and to think and to write. And I think I mentioned in the Accidental Creative in our former house, the house we used to live in, I built a little home office kind of nook for myself, and I told my wife, this is where I'm going to do my life's work. And I think we all need those places in our life, places where we can seclude ourselves and be alone with our thoughts and think and process and write and dream and all of these things, because we are being encroached upon on every front by culture. We're being encroached upon emotionally, psychologically, physically, and we need to carve out what Joseph Campbell calls sacred space in our life. And I know that sounds very mystical, especially for business people. What? Sacred space. But I think probably many people resonate with this idea of we're being encroached upon. There are more people, more resources, more people screaming for our attention, clamoring for us, and we're not often good at developing discipline, developing buffers, building walls around that. And so just having a place to retreat to, a place where you can think and write and be alone, can be very, very important. It doesn't have to be a room in your home. It could be, like you said, a coffee shop. It could be, a quiet room in a building somewhere. It can be in a park. You could take a walk, and that could be kind of your sacred space. But I think we need those places in our life to reset and recalibrate.
And I think I'm curious about your opinion that we need different kind of places for different kind of things. If I'm dealing with papers, invoices, I have to sit in a desk to do the thing properly. But when I'm writing, because I also write books, and I need different spaces for doing such a things. If I'm talking with clients, I like to speak with them in an informal environment, like coffee shops or restaurants. I don't want to stay with them in a conference room, which are glass box.
Absolutely. So every day I try to take a long walk as much as I can. I try to take about a
Steve Jobs
5-mile walk, which I think is about 3.7 kilometers, I think, maybe, or no, it's more than that. It's like 7 kilometers. No, okay, I'm terrible with this translate. But I try to take a long walk every day and try to as much as possible, just be with myself and get exercise. And that for me has become a bit of a sacred space, walking the, 7 or 8 kilometers a day that I'm able to walk and just be alone. And I get to look at the world around me. I get to think about problems I'm trying to solve. I try as much as I can, I try to block out any external stimuli. Sometimes I'll listen to books while I'm doing that. I'll listen to music, just quiet music, but sometimes I'll just leave the earphones out and I'll just walk and just observe and listen. And those times are incredibly grounding and centering. And for some people, they would say, well, wait a minute, that probably takes you, an hour to do that? I mean, I don't have an hour in my day. I would encourage you to consider that you can't afford not to do that. It seems very inefficient in the moment, but I will tell you, and I could be very, very candidly say, each of my books, each of the core ideas for each of my books have come from those walks. They've emerged during those times when I'm walking, I'm alone, I'm thinking, I'm processing. All three of my books have resulted from that. So, I would encourage you that if you want to have insights, you not only need to immerse yourself in the work and fill your mind with stimuli and all these things, but you have to occasionally break away from that and be alone and allow your mind the time to process and synthesize and just to spend time thinking. We don't think often these days. We react and we quickly process, we quickly form patterns, but we don't really think deeply. We don't really delve into the patterns beneath the obvious patterns.
Looking for the why.
Right, exactly. We often don't do that these days. And so I would encourage anyone who feels encroached upon by the world to make sure that you're building buffers and building disciplines in your life to step back and process.
That was the biggest mistake I've done in my previous company, which failed. But I was, running like a sportsman, marathon guy, but I didn't stop for the pit stops to change tires, to drink water. I just ran. So now I'm, working like in a week sprints. After 1 week, I'm stopping myself, taking a note, going for a walk, going to the seaside, and spending time with myself, letting my brain to process much more easily, without phone, no distractions, me, myself, and I, right?
Yes.
And do you use any tools like noting pads or dictaphones?
I do. I have this notebook goes with me everywhere,
Okay.
and I have you'll notice I have a little okay, I'm going to be a little bit of a notebook geek here, but you'll notice I have a little quiver on there that holds my pen. This is my favorite pen, the Pilot G2 extra fine or ultra fine. And then I have a highlighter, because what I'll do when I go through my notes and I review my notes on a daily basis, and I'll show you here an example. I have to find one that doesn't have something hyper personal on it. You'll notice I go through and I actually highlight. I don't know if you can see that. It looks like the light's not allowing it.
Oh,
to
now it's
highlight,
okay. Yes.
Different things as I go and I review my notes that I want to come back to later. I use the highlighter to do that. And so, it's not just important to take notes, it's important to review those notes on a consistent basis. Often we have ideas and then we just gloss right by them and we move on with our life, but we're not going back and looking at those notes and reviewing them and asking how might these insights apply to what I'm working on. So, that would be my encouragement. But yeah, I do. I take the notebook. I also have my phone with me typically when I go out, so I will occasionally make a note, in my to-do list or something like that. But the notebook is kind of the thing that is my go-to. I also have a little index card holder that I use a lot of index cards. So a lot of my notes start out on index cards and end up in my notebook. So.
And a lot of people are looking for special kind of tools to be productive, effective. I agree with you totally. Like blank piece of paper, a pen. Right. That's it.
Right. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think people are looking for the killer tool, the most
best
amazing
tool.
Right, the special pen, the special notebook. And the reality is that some of the best novels of all time were written on simple lined ruled pads of paper, and they just rip them off.
Right.
I'm sorry.
On the menus, on the restaurants.
Exactly. Or napkins. Some of the best business ideas happen on cocktail napkins or whatever. So. Use the tool that's in front of you. Don't think that a system is, finding the perfect system is the solution. The reality is what you need to do is commit to a system. Commit to a system and work the system. So many people become slaves to their system instead of the system serving them. They're looking for the perfect system. And there is no perfect system. There's nothing that's going to perfectly solve your problems, but you need a system. That's what I wanted to do in the book, is offer a system that seems to work for a lot of people in most circumstances, right? Because there is no perfect system for all circumstances. So this seems to work for most people in most circumstances. And here it is. And if you work this system over time, you will find yourself being prolific, being brilliant, and being healthy in life and in work.
Sometimes people asking me, how do you manage your clients, relationships, and all your deals that you do? I'm telling them I use the tool called Whiteboard. What is it? Where I can download it? No, you have to hang it on your wall.
You can see I'm a fan of that tool as well. I have one behind me right now.
Yeah, brother from another mother, right?
That's right. Yeah, I think we downloaded it from the same place, I think. Yes.
It's possible. And another great idea from your books, we are talking generally about your old books that we publish in Poland, not any particular one. And this die empty idea is my favorite idea of all books I ever write, and publish, because it's such a great and simple that we even, we're trying to find a Polish title for this. But if you translate, die empty, which is gonna be like umrzyj pusty, it's like, no, it doesn't sound good. It
doesn't work. Yes, right.
No. So we left the title, it's die empty, and we create like Polish subtitle, which is saying 100% live, more or less.
Yeah.
And it works perfectly.
Wonderful.
So can you explain this die empty, idea, and let's talk about it, because it's super, super excited and interesting from my point of view.
Yes. So many years ago, a friend of mine was leading a meeting, and he asked kind of a very strange question. He said, "What do you think is the most valuable land in the world?" And we thought, that's a very strange question. I don't know. And so we started throwing out guesses, and all of our guesses were wrong. We were guessing oil fields and gold mines and all these things. And finally, he said, I think the most valuable land in the world is the graveyard, because in the graveyard are buried all of the unwritten novels, all of the unlaunched businesses, all of the ideas that people carried with them their entire life. And they thought, well, tomorrow I'll start that. Tomorrow I'll get around to that. And they pushed it and they pushed it and they pushed it into the future until one day all of those valuable ideas were buried with them in the ground, never to be seen by human eyes. So that's why the graveyard is the most valuable land in the world, the cemetery, because all of that value was buried with them in the ground. And that day, I went back to my office and I wrote 2 words on an index card, and I put them on the wall of my office, put them on my whiteboard, put them in my notebook. And those 2 words were die empty, because I want to know when I reach the end of my life, I'm not carrying my best work to the grave with me, that I'm not going to die full of my best work. Instead, I'm doing everything I can on a daily basis to get that work out into the world so that it can influence and impact others. And ultimately, that's why we work. We want to influence others. We want to impact the world. We want to create value. So don't leave that value inside of you. Don't let it sit there inside of you your entire life. Do something every day to get your best work out of you. And that's really what the message of Die Empty is all about.
And a lot of people are thinking that if you have an idea, you have to create something from it. That sometimes it's only your role to share the idea, to pass it forward, to let other people create something from your thoughts, actually. So what's your think? What do you think about charging or not charging for ideas?
Charging or not charging is a great question. Ideas have value, and work has value. It is always.
Sorry, I will interrupt. What's more important, idea or the execution?
Well, they're equally important. I think they're 2 sides of the same coin. You can have a great idea with poor execution and it's not going to work. And you can have a terrible idea with great execution and it's not going to work. You have to have both if you want to be successful. Now, there are some really bad ideas with great execution that maybe have gained a little bit of traction, but they're not going to go very far. And there's some really great ideas with poor execution that don't go very far either, right? So if you want a sustainable idea, sustainable business model, you have to have great idea, great execution. They work in tandem with one another. So as it relates to charging for ideas, I spend 2 years writing a book, many months trying to figure out the best way to get that book out to people, go through that entire process with all of the publishers around the world that publish my work, and then
reverse engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then in the end, and not to mention that it's the result of 20 plus years of experience and thought and insight. And then when somebody says, really, $15 for a book? Really? And it just makes me want to pull my hair out. And I think, do you understand how much went into this? How much time, how much energy, how much focus, how much life experience went into this? And so, it is what it is, and it's going to happen. It's,
And they spend more when they go to the cinema.
Absolutely. That's right. Well, the same people who will... the same people who will pay $7 for a really fancy coffee will complain about $7 for a book that could change their life. If you get one idea, one actionable insight out of something, it's worth it, right? It pays off. It's worth it. So, that would be my encouragement to people is, listen, you have to charge what your ideas are worth. And you have to do that confidently, because ideas have value for people, and we're sort of training people, I think, in some ways that ideas are free, that content is free. But it's not free. It costs the creator dearly to make something. And so I think we have to figure out a way that we can help people understand the value of our ideas. And I think that at the end of the day, that's really what we have to do as creators. We can't assume people understand how valuable our ideas are. We have to convince people of how valuable they are.
And I'm sure you work with, thousands of people, business people, and you're helping them with the creative process, etc. And what's your advice for them if they're talented, super multi-creative, but they cannot hustle? Actually, so they cannot push the idea into the market. What should be the first step to, hustle more? Because from my point of view, if talent beats hustle, no. Hustle beats talent when talent doesn't hustle. Oh, that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. You can be very talented if you don't have hustle, if you don't have grit, if you don't have persistence, if you're not willing to put your work out in the world and let people shoot arrows at it because you're too afraid of what people are going to say about you, you will fail. You will not succeed. You will not make an impact. You have to be willing to do what's uncomfortable when it's the right thing. Those who build brilliant bodies of work are those who do the right thing when it's the uncomfortable thing. And that's a real challenge, especially for talented people, because talented people don't want other people shooting arrows at their ideas, right? So what they do instead of hustling, instead of, engaging fully with their work, what they do instead is they leave their ideas inside of them to convince themselves of how brilliant they are, and they never put them out there in the world where they might possibly fail. But that's exactly what we have to do if we want to eventually succeed. Is we have to be willing to fail in the short run, to learn from that and to redirect, so that we can eventually succeed in the long run.
A friend of mine is saying that ideas are not our babies, but they are our slaves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what do you think about it? Because I think
that's a great way to think about it, because ideas are the result of our thought process, of our creative process, right? And so when you treat an idea as too precious, I think it can sometimes, create a kind of paralysis, because you don't want your idea to be disparaged in any way. Ideas, really, like, we come full circle. Ideas are cheap, relatively cheap, right? Anybody can have an idea. It's who executes it well. So you have to be willing to put it out there in the world. You have to be willing to let other people shoot arrows at your idea.
Todd, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Nice meeting you as well. Thank you.
I'm sure we can talk for long hours and topics won't gonna end.
Absolutely.
So I'm really happy that I can introduce personally to our Polish audience. I will share this link wherever we can, and I'm sure I'll be back to you with a list of questions to arrange another interview in the future.
I would love that. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Mam nadzieję, że ten materiał był dla Was wartościowy. Jeśli macie jakiekolwiek pytania do Todda Henry'ego, napiszcie proszę w komentarzach i przy kolejnym wywiadzie, rozmowie z Toddem postaram się uwzględnić Wasze pytania, a tymczasem jeśli macie ochotę tą książkę mieć dla siebie, ponad 300 stron wartościowej wiedzy o kreatywności, zapraszam do linku poniżej. Dzięki wielkie, że spędziliście z nami ponad 35 minut? 30 minut? Dzięki. Trzymajcie się, hej!